With nearly 150 distinct bands spread across their original homeland in the northern United States, primarily Minnesota, Wisconsin, and Michigan, and southern Canada, primarily Ontario, Manitoba, and Saskatchewan, the Chippewa, also known as the Ojibwe, and Anishinaabe, rank among the largest and most influential nations in North America. The meaning of Ojibwe is to roast till puckered up, a reference to the way their moccasin seams are puckered. The tribe once lived along the banks of Lakes Huron and Superior, which cut through North Dakota and the Minnesota Turtle Mountains. Despite their considerable population and vast territory, the Chippewa never gained prominence in history, largely due to their distance from the frontier during the colonial wars. Tradition holds that they were once part of an Algonquian group that also included the Ottawa and Potawatomi. This group separated into divisions upon reaching Mackinac, Michigan, during their westward migration. The Ojibwe language belongs to the Algonquian language family. The Ojibwe lived in various groups, with most adopting a sedentary lifestyle except for those on the Great Plains. Men primarily fished and hunted, while women cultivated crops like corn and squash and harvested wild rice. They typically dwelled in wigwams, constructed as either domed or pointed lodges made from bark or grass mats and willow saplings. Early in their history, the Ojibwe were known for their expertise in crafting birch bark canoes and scrolls, as well as their involvement in copper mining and trade. They also cultivated wild rice and maple syrup. As custodians of intricate scrolls recording events, oral history, music, maps, recollections, stories, geometry, and arithmetic, their Midewiwin society was highly esteemed. In the traditional Ojibwe society, they followed a patrilineal system where children were recognized as belonging to the father's clan. This meant that, unless they were legally adopted by an Ojibwe male, children of French or English fathers were viewed as outside the clan and Ojibwe culture. Historical records suggest that polygamy was prevalent within the tribe. Certain Chippewa bands, such as those residing on LaPointe Island, Wisconsin, were reported to have practiced cannibalism, which was viewed with repugnance by other bands. Additionally, the Pillager Band in Minnesota was known to engage in ceremonial cannibalism on occasion. The Chippewa share a creation myth similar to other northern Algonquian tribes. Like many indigenous groups, they believe that a mystical force resides in all things, living or not. These entities, known as Manitus, remain vigilant and attentive throughout the summer months, but during winter they enter a dormant state, especially after snowfall. Dreams are highly valued by the Chippewa, often seen as divine messages, and certain symbols or objects encountered in dreams are chosen as spiritual protectors. The Midewiwin, also known as the Grand Medicine Society, once wielded significant influence among the Chippewa, governing tribal affairs and presenting a significant challenge to the spread of Christianity. In Chippewa tradition, when someone passed away, it was customary to bury them facing west, sometimes seated upright in the grave, or laid in a shallow pit on their back or side. The burial site would then be covered with earth to form a small mound, often topped with boards, poles, or birch bark. However, burial practices varied among different groups. For instance, the Chippewa of Fond du Lac, Wisconsin, followed a different custom, opting for scaffold burials where the deceased was placed in a box. The mourning period for a departed loved one typically lasted a year, unless shortened by the Medicine Society or significant achievements in warfare. Certain historians suggested that the Chippewa were established in a sizable village in LaPointe, Wisconsin, around the time of America's discovery. Yet, during the early 17th century, they vacated this location, with many returning to their original territory in Sault Ste. Marie, Michigan. On the other hand, some chose to settle at the western tip of Lake Superior, where they were encountered by Father Claude Jean Allouet, a Jesuit missionary and French explorer, in 1865. Sault Ste. Marie emerged as their focal point around 1640, noted in the earliest records by Jean-Nicolas de Belborne, a French-Canadian woodsman who referred to them as Boiche de Gouin, meaning people of the Sault. In 1642, missionaries Charles Rambaud and Isaac Jogues visited them at the Sault and found them in conflict with a western group, likely the Sioux. Due to their distance from the frontier, the Chippewa played a minor role in the early colonial conflicts. While the southern faction of the tribe was recognized for their warlike tendencies, those residing north of Lake Superior were viewed as peaceful, earning them the nickname the Rabbits from their southern counterparts. In the northern regions, they were described as men of the thick woods and swamp people, reflecting the nature of their habitat. The Marameg, a tribe closely associated with or possibly a branch of the Chippewa, resided along the north shore of the lake and merged with the Chippewa while they were stationed at the Saul before 1670. To the north, the Chippewa shared such close ties with the Cree and Muskegon that distinguishing among them required deep familiarity with their languages and traditions. Meanwhile, to the south, the Chippewa, Ottawa, and Potawatomi formed a loose alliance often referred to as the Three Fires. In the late 1600s, the Chippewa residing south of Lake Superior relied heavily on fishing, hunting, and growing maize and wild rice. Their ownership of wild rice fields often sparked conflicts with the Dakota, Fox, and other tribes. Around the same time, they acquired firearms and expanded westward, sometimes in peace, sometimes in conflict with the Sioux, and frequently at odds with the Fox tribe. The French reopened a trade post at Chowgawamacong, Wisconsin, now LaPointe Island, in 1692, and it grew to be a major Chippewa community. By the early 18th century, the Chippewa successfully drove the Fox, who had already been weakened by battles with the French, out of northern Wisconsin, forcing them to seek refuge with the Sac tribe. They then turned their attention to the Sioux, pushing them across the Mississippi River and southward to the Minnesota River. They built their westernmost band in the Turtle Mountains after continuing their westward voyage through Minnesota and North Dakota to the Red River's headwaters. It wasn't until after 1736 that they began to expand their territory west of Lake Superior. While the main divisions of the tribe were expanding their lands in the west, others moved into the peninsula between Lake Huron and Lake Erie, which the Iroquois had long claimed. The Iroquois were eventually forced to retreat, allowing the Chippewa bands to occupy the entire region, many of which became known as the Mississauga. By 1764, their population was estimated to be around 25,000 people. The Chippewa joined other tribes in the Northwest in fighting against frontier settlements until the end of the War of 1812. Those residing within the United States made a treaty with the government in 1815 and thereafter maintained peace, living on reservations or allotted lands within their original territory in Michigan, Wisconsin, Minnesota, and North Dakota. Henry Schoolcraft, an American geographer, geologist, and ethnologist who married into the Chippewa tribe, described the Chippewa warriors as among the most physically impressive of the Northwest Indians, rivaled only by the Fox. Their prolonged and successful conflicts with the Sioux and Fox tribes showcased their bravery and resolve, yet they maintained friendly relations with the French and later European settlers. However, attempts by missionaries to convert them to Christianity had little impact, largely due to the influence of native medicine men and their conservative beliefs. The Ojibwe engaged in various wars and battles following European contact, including the Beaver Wars, King William's War, and the Northwest Indian War. Through many of these conflicts, they relinquished or sold land rights in Michigan, Minnesota, and Wisconsin to the federal government in numerous treaties. One significant agreement signed in 1854 established permanent Ojibwe reservations in these three states. Today, the collective bands of Chippewa, or Ojibwe, represent one of the largest groups of Native American peoples in North America, with communities in both Canada and the United States. They are the second biggest First Nations group in Canada, with only the Cree being larger. They are the fifth largest Native American tribe in the United States, after the Navajo, Cherokee, Choctaw, and Lakota, Dakota, Nakota Sioux. There are numerous Chippewa tribes that are officially recognized in the states of Michigan, Minnesota, Montana, North and South Dakota, Wisconsin, and Canada. The most recent of these is the Little Shell of Montana, which was recognized by the federal government in December 2019 after receiving state protection in the late 1900s.